Good evening, I'm Amir Krivoshia.
And I'm Ivana Dragicevic. You're watching Forum Europa N1 program, which we are working on with cooperation with the European Fund for the Balkans.
They say that youth is our future. So how come that 20 years after the end of the war, our future is fleeing from home? Can anything be done to reverse the process?
So tonight we'll talk with a very important and distinguished guest. I wish to welcome Dr. Erhard Busek. I don't know where to start with all the functions that you've been on during these years, from Vice Chancellor of Austria, former Minister of Education, to the person who was responsible for the Stability Pact for the Balkans, Secretary General of Organization for Youth Education and Development, Institute for Danube Region, and so on and so on.
Yeah. Here is Đuro Blanša, who is the Secretary General of Regional Youth Cooperation Office based in Tirana in Albania. Welcome.
And with us is Mr. Franc Bogovic, distinguished member of European Parliament from Slovenia. Welcome to our program.
Welcome.
So,
yeah, the most important question at the beginning. Does anyone in this studio have relevant data on how many young people fled the region after the war, let's say, in the period between 1996 till today?
Does
anyone have any data?
I think I only know the percentage of the young generation being outside or are not employed. So far, I think it's shocking figures. It's something between 25 and 50%. It differs from country to country and also from situation to situation. But anyway, it is too high.
Mr. Blanša, you are the youngest among the guests. What do you know about that?
But the question you raised is actually about this brain drain issue that is really hitting hard our region since, let's say, 90s. And I would, let's say, address this issue from two different angles. One is this, the fact that in contemporary society, we do have young people who are traveling around, and this educational mobility is even something positive. It brought a lot of diversity in the European Union itself, and also what Regional Youth Cooperation Office is going to do in upcoming period. We are going to promote this way of mobility within the region and also
we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Yes. What we are talking here is this negative side, a negative trend of having thousands of young people. I would not now go with numbers, but I think that tens of thousands of young people, not only young people, but those who are most educated, those who are acquired certain best skills and competencies in their educational system in their countries, they really fled and they left countries and never came back. I think it's a huge impact on our societies in the region, and it's an issue that we have to deal with. RICO will address this issue in upcoming years, and I guess we will have some time to discuss.
But it's a brain gain for somebody.
For somebody, yes. I don't know how much European Union can even benefit of these young people coming there, but it's the question for us in the region how we are going to address it within the reform processes, not only in the educational system and labor law and employment system, but also how we are going to deal with young people, how we are going to ask them what are the real needs and how we are going to provide them with a space for actually taking the opportunity and taking the floor in decision-making process. And youth participation in the region is actually quite neglected. What we are still misusing is even within the wording, we are wrongly use the word of participation. Communication and dialogue with young people is not participation of young people. Young people are usually invited to take part in discussion mainly as a decoration, if I may say so. So I think that this is the main problem. We have to have them on board, together with them to develop certain strategies and policies, and then to at least try to keep them.
Mr. Bogovic, it seems that we have too much words and too little, real work on the field. We heard recently the words from Croatian president. She called this brain drain, people leaving Croatia, for example, a national catastrophe.
Disaster.
Yes. These figures are really terrible. As Mr. Busek said, there is between 1/4 of young generation who is born and more, 1/3, close to half of population who leave the countries. And there are also another trends inside these countries which are also, from my side, negative. This is the first step of centralization of countries. I know, for example, figures for Serbia that among 4,800 villages, 1,200 of them, 1/4 of them are empty. And the next step is from big cities, from Belgrade, to foreign countries. And I think this is not only a problem in Serbia and also not only in Western Balkan country, it's also inside European Union. And we now see that figures in Spain, in other countries, these regions are similar. So this is not good for Europe at all. So we must stop this migration and try to find answers. I can say a few words about things which happened in my country, in Slovenia. In the 70s, we had inside Yugoslavia one president of Slovenian government who spoke about polycentric development of country. And from that time, we based our development on Ljubljana as capital, Maribor as industrial city, and also 6 regional centers and 35 cities, between 5 and 15,000. These are figures in 2 million population. And now, with help of European Fund, we invested a lot in infrastructure in rural areas. This is not only basic infrastructure, roads, broadband and other things. This is also cultural, social, education infrastructure. And in Slovenia, we stopped this trend that people don't push to move in cities and then. Today, there are migration also in Slovenia as in other countries. There are a lot of young people find their challenges outside, but it is fine if there is not one-way street just to live. And as I follow figures for Serbia, for example, in 2015, 105,000 people died and 65,000 people was born. So that's a big problem, and it's necessary to do something. It's necessary to do inside Western Balkan, inside Europe in this.
But what have you done in Slovenia, for example? What have you done?
As I said, we invested a lot first in basic infrastructure so that people have quite good condition for living, and this is opposite like in Croatia. I know figures for Croatia. There is also big pressure on city Zagreb, and the next step is to find jobs close to areas where people live. And for us, it must be clear that the basic reason why young people stay in your country to find a prosperity, to find a job, and to get comparable income. It can be a little lower than in foreign countries because there are different codes, but without jobs, without future, we cannot push on young people to stay at home.
What Mr. Bogovic said, it is a trend within the European Union. So the population is aging, but I think there are some really important specifics in the Western Balkans and Southeastern Europe. Some say that post-war oligarchic social orders, in a way, pushed out this highly skilled people as unwanted elite in these systems that were formed after the war. You're responsible for a lot of important programs, for a lot of money being invested in the region, especially in programs also for the youth. So how do you feel watching this situation today, personally, as you committed yourself in this area? Do you feel, I don't know, responsible, disappointed, or do you still think that...
I think to be disappointed does not really help. I think I have the feeling that we have to do something on the subject.
Still responsible for this, because you were in charge. And...
For sure, and we tried also to fight it. But in general, I think what was mentioned here by you was totally right, but there are different factors. I think it is forgotten, especially for former Yugoslavia, that the whole process started with the so-called Gastarbeiter. Yeah. I think here it moved a lot of people to Central Europe, to Western Europe, and so on and so on. I think we have now the fourth generation of those who came as Gastarbeiter to Austria or Germany, and so on and so on. And I may say that's a positive side, they are really integrated. Here the problem of integration is not existing. If you are looking to leading positions in economy, also in arts, in science, and so on and so on, this generation was a tremendous help. There's a second part which we should not forget. We, the so-called Western side, as far as Austria is West, we have to be grateful for this because the population diminished by the birth rate already mentioned. And I think it was a very necessary compensation here. I think if I'm looking to the figures, I was for a certain time, 13 years, working in the city of Vienna. In this time, we expected that Vienna will go down from 1.5 million inhabitants to nearly 1 million. And especially the downfall of Yugoslavia and the Iron Curtain changed the situation. We are coming now closer to nearly 2 million inhabitants, which is a figure out of the old monarchy a long time ago. And that's extremely helpful. And I want to say it quite clearly. We have to be grateful. And out of this, we are getting obligations. Because we have to look what can be done, I think, to create more investment in the region. This means jobs and also investment on infrastructure. You have mentioned rightly infrastructure, but if I'm looking in general to Southeast Europe, we are missing a lot on infrastructure. For example, the railway system is still a horrible one. Looking to the time you need to go from Vienna to Ljubljana or to Zagreb.
Highways also.
Highway is a little bit better, since the Slovenians are closing the gaps.
But in Bosnia, for example, you have... But in Bosnia, for example...
Tragical infrastructure.
Really.
Tragic.
But this is connected with the political system.
It is.
I think I had the possibility, with the help of the Deutsche Bahn, a German railway, to get money for improving the railway system in Bosnia. We failed. Here was a Director General from Republika Srpska sitting, here from the Federation. We had the money and were saying what to do. They were not able to propose what in common. So far, the German friends said goodbye. It's not possible, I think, to do it. I think that's very much depending. It's not only the responsibility of the different governments and so on, but I think they need more intention and to be quite open. And I think it's good that you are doing this activity. I think we need more cross-border regional cooperation. I think the country is doing a lot. But is it really connected with what the neighboring country is doing? Are we closing the gaps which are really existing? I'm involved in the Danube, for example. It's extremely difficult to get the cooperation along the river Danube because every country is convinced we have the only one solution.
Considering the things that you have just said, I have to read some fresh statistics. It says that the number of Austrian citizenship has continued to grow in the first 9 months of this year, and the list of countries of origin is still headed by Bosnia and Herzegovina, according to the Statistical Office
of Austria.
Of Austria. In the first 9 months of this year, 6,856 people received Austrian citizenship, which compared to the same period last year increased by 9%. And the question is, why is Austria so appealing to our people? Is it because of the distance? Or
no,
what's the main reason?
It's depending on the law. I think if you are staying for a certain time in my country, you have the right to get the Austrian citizenship. And they are all running.
Which is how many years?
I think now there's a tendency to higher it up. I think you can get it up for 3 years. And even your job is needed, you can get it earlier. Here you can see the tendency to gain labor force, which we need for some parts. It is quite
That's an example of a brain gain in Austria.
It's not only brain, it's skilled labor force, especially. Because this is a problem of our education system. I think skilled workers are really missing. And we are getting it from other countries, which is a mistake. I'm campaigning since a longer time for programs bringing them back also. It happened, very much depending sometimes on politics. For example, interesting enough, in Kosovo it was possible that a lot of them go back. They're still coming a lot for sure, but this was one of the successful programs. I think what is necessary, and you mentioned rightly Serbia and empty villages and so on and so on. I think here I'm trying by the Danube activity to create programs of cooperation, for example, with the southeastern part of Serbia towards Romania, to that of Craiova, and to Vidin in Bulgaria, because they are all empty. And I think here we need investment, and we need also improvement by right education. And I think I want to touch especially this point. I think I was quite happy to do a good job in the Stability Pact with some results. One area we totally failed, that was education. Why? In all my love to the European Union, it is a principle of the European Treaty that education is not a common subject. It is a subject of the different member states, and that is a mistake. I think here we need a closer cooperation.
And everyone is talking about structural reforms still in these countries and educational reform, especially not just for non-EU members, but, for example, we in Croatia have a huge now debate and issue on educational reform.
Me personally, I work on these topics also as a member of European Parliament, and I'm involved in this initiative, Alliance for Youth, which is led by Nestlé and 200 European companies. And for example, I was 2 weeks ago in Vienna to visit your Ministry for Education, Chamber of Commerce, and we spoke about what to do to have more practical things in education system as you have dual learning system. As I follow in Serbia, for example, Serbian Chamber of Economy, they work also a lot with Austrian Chamber of Commerce. And I think that it's necessary to do something, and education, I totally agree, is the first thing what is necessary to do. But if we look this process also in my country, for example, in the area close to Austria, Maribor, Slovengrad, as you know this, we have daily migration between 15,000 and 20,000 people who works in Austria. On another side, we have quite a lot of people who arise from Bosnia and Kosovo especially, for example, skilled people in building construction. And in our country, as country, is on both sides. And we have balanced migration flow because of these people who arrive to us. But as we said, for my side, and if I follow, I'm also a member of regional Committee for Regional Development, and I follow these cohesion funds, and we can see that, for example, these newcomers countries which joined European Union since 2004, like Slovakia, Czech Republic, Baltic countries, Hungary, Romania, their net income through cohesion fund will be in 14 years, in two financial perspectives, between 300,000 and 500,000 to 7,000 euro per capita. And we invest a lot of cohesion money through this principle of solidarity in these countries. On another side, through IPA funds, for example, Serbia will got in 2 periods 400 euro per capita. Bosnia much less, other countries less. And in this case, I always repeat, if we really want to do something to support this structural reform, to support the building infrastructure, because this money is not only money, this is also driver for reforms in countries. I know from my side, we made a lot of reform because we got projects, programs, and we also switched our budgets. I think that Europe, if we want really be honest to this part of Europe, we must say this is only 17 million people. Enlargement process was from 390 to 500 million euro. And this is not, as I see, this is not a financial question, this is a question of goodwill of Europe. And I think that we who are closer to this area, we know much more that we are very responsible for this area, and the perspective of this area must be more clear than it's today. Otherwise, young people will not see the future in their countries, they will leave countries, and there will be bigger and bigger problems. And I'm afraid of this trend, which are not good, and I thank you that you organize this, and I think it's necessary to have action, not only speeches.
Just your intervention.
You touched a real subject, I think, which is of great importance. And I think by my work, which I'm steadily doing, and I'm also supporting the European Fund of the Balkans in this direction, I think you have to concentrate where you are spending the money and how it is done. I think you mentioned IPA, money for the region.
Yes.
Quite important. But my experience is the different governments and also sometimes the economic structure is not really able to develop projects, that they are elaborated and that they can be done. there's a good idea. We need this. And if you're asking how it is done, what are the next steps, and so on, you are getting no answer.
Again, capacity building and education
That's
in
right.
other form.
And I think to train the people. European Fund of the Balkans is training the people. There's one problem, I have to confess. I'm a little bit responsible. I think that they are getting places for practice in ministries of member states of the European Union. That's sometimes difficult. I think here I'm critical of the member states to prepare it. I think we have to do a specific training. But here in elaboration of specific project, I think the region has to be better.
Yes. Talking about the political will, both inside of European Union and within the region, one thing stood out in the last couple of years, and that was the Berlin process. And within the Berlin process, we had the launch of so-called RICO initiative. So let's show our viewers what RICO's mission is.
What is RICO? RICO stands for Regional Youth Cooperation Office. RICO is a successful initiative within the framework of the Berlin process, which strengthens the regional cooperation in the Western Balkans. RICO helps to create new links after the divisions of the wars. Reconciliation, trust, cooperation and dialogue under the young generation. In July 2016, the Prime Ministers of the Western Balkans signed an agreement to establish RICO. Head office is in Tirana, with local branches in the other main cities across the region. RICO is financed by the 6 governments of the contracting parties and is supported by the EU and other donors. This is to promote projects that bring together youth of the region. The focus of its work is to support youth exchanges and dialogue at all possible levels. RICO's main aim is to support, fund and steward high-quality youth and educational exchange and cooperation processes with young people and in cooperation with the civil society. Inspired by the experience of the Franco-German Youth Office, the role of RICO is to contribute to a peaceful and constructive dialogue in a sustainable and efficient way. It's our region. It's our Europe.
So, Mr. Blanuša, as the Secretary General of Regional Youth Cooperation Office, what do you judge? Do young people of the region want to cooperate? Do they want to go, I don't know, from Belgrade to Tirana for a university exchange, or are they preferring to go to Berlin or to Paris or Barcelona?
Those are statistics that I'm unfortunately more familiar with. And unfortunately, I have to share with you some alarming numbers and statistics that around 65–70% of young people in the region do have negative attitudes toward their peers across the border. So this is the thing that RICO would like to address through our programs in the future. That's why we launched the call 1 month ago, and we received 420 applications, which means that the interest in the region is really high, it's really huge. But it's not RICO the only mechanism of reconciliation in the region. I think that we all together should actually take part in this process of having this enabling environment for young people to stay. I mean, if we rely only on RICO, which is really the most tangible result and most visible result of the Berlin process, I think we are on the wrong way to keep young people in the region. I think that all together, so decision makers, politicians, media, parliamentarians, education system, we all have to invest some time and energy and to make sure that at least our daily narrative have to be changed. We can see, we are really witnesses of the fact that, especially before elections in the region, these daily rhetorics of our politicians are really changed towards those right-wing voters to gain and to generate their votes. And those politicians are actually the models for our young people. And this is really reflecting in a most negative way on the attitudes of our youth in the region. That's why RICO is established, really to, again, put high on the agenda the topic of reconciliation. I was really closely listening to the previous debate, and I really think that as much as this connectivity when it comes to infrastructure is really like a prerequisite for the reconciliation in the region, also we have to think about human connectivity. We have to think about youth connectivity in the region. We have to go a couple of steps back and again measure the stereotypes and negative prejudice between young people in the region, because I fully agree with the fact that we need to invest money in bridges, in highways, in railways, in power plants. But I was wondering who is going to cross those bridges? Who is going to, if there is no, at least the basic will of young people to meet each other and to actually exchange their cultures and really these learning opportunity. I mean, these are those soft skills that are now really as a kind of a requirement for being well-skilled in the labor market today. And this is the main role of the RICO in the future, actually, to provide these young people with these kind of experiences in the region. Because I was also engaged with these first projects of bilateral exchange between young Serbs and young Albanians. And I remember my first time when I was traveling to Tirana, even I was the one who had a lot of fears going there for the first time. But I am the result of this unique experience of actually knowing each other and being there and getting and receiving these cultures, and to see, despite all differences, there are a lot of similarities, there are a lot of synergies that can be made by joint cooperation. And again, we are going back to the main topic of this debate, which is a human capital. And I'm afraid that we are now losing substance. We are losing those young people who should be the driving force for the reform processes in the region. We have to be very careful about it. We have to call for the support of our Western Europe partners to give us more. I will share with you what is the budget of RICO. It's 1.5 million euro. 1.5 million euro, which means that around 1 million will be our grant scheme for this year. This is really not sufficient even to send the message. We really need to invest more. And I'm not speaking only about budget. I'm going back again, what are the real needs of young people and how these needs should be addressed by our decision makers.
You saw that, I'm sorry, that 51% of your budget is basically provided from the governments in the region. They committed themselves throughout various summits of the Berlin process to actively participate. So how come that basically no one in these countries, you know, you have to work hard to inform yourselves to find what you're doing and, you know, how can people engage? Because we have one bazaine of young people who are active, who are cooperating through NGOs, but basically how to enter schools, how to enter system to the project, which is basically financed by the government. It's confusing a little bit.
Let me put it this way. I think that RICO as an institution, the whole idea was launched even back in Berlin in late August 2014, the very beginning of the Berlin process. It took some time. This was something that really engaged different stakeholders. Civil society took a really important role. And again, I think this is the first initiative that really expressed the goodwill and commitment by the government. But at the end of the day, as I said, I mean, to provide contribution, financial contribution is one part. The second part is really now to start to deliver concrete programs and projects. You're fully right, but just for your information, RICO team started our work in late August. So we are, for now, 12 on board. We have headquarters in Tirana, as it was in this short movie presented. We have local branches all over the place, but it takes time also to prepare and to make sure that our programs are really tailored towards needs of young people. You also write, that high school students and pupils are really like the main target group. We need to introduce the culture of mobility, but intra-Balkan mobility, not the culture of actually getting certain skills and then going abroad. And that's how the Western Europe can benefit within this brain gain game, but really to make sure that those young people are informed at least about the opportunity in the region, because as you also said, I call these people who are already sharing the same values and traveling around kind of usual suspects. So there's a really huge cohort of young activists really traveling a lot around, but we are not providing impact. If you would like to provide impact, we have to reach out towards those young people who are in the remote areas, in the rural areas, and this is a challenge. This is the challenge. Please, we can't run before we can walk. Give us some time, give us some patience, give us some more means to really reach out towards young people, and we need partners. We need governments, we need civil society. It takes time.
That's understandable.
And I guess that at this moment, I think that it's a really huge result. We should be aware of the fact that now, after the first step, there are other steps to be undertaken, and I hope we are on the right way.
You just said moments ago that you personally are a result of that migration between young people. Could you tell us more about the circumstances, conditions in your office, in headquarters in Tirana? And you said the budget is, what did you say?
I would say that budget is not sufficient when it comes to expectations. Let's put it this way. We have
conditions in office?
When it comes to office, yes. First of all, yes, I'm the example of a young Serb, not young, sorry. I'm not young any longer.
You are.
And I'm not, according to the law on youth, I'm not young for a long time. Anyway, I came from Belgrade to Tirana, and it's like a really huge life experience. But I really, that part is let's say, the most beautiful part of my daily job now. The less beautiful part of my daily job now is again, one step back, commitments of the government. I have to unfortunately share some information that at this moment, headquartered in Tirana do not have the basic conditions for work.
Heating, for example.
Heating, for example. Not to go now into details, and these topics will be addressed on our governing board meeting, and these are the things that we actually seek and we would like to expect from our governments. It's nice to have the photo opportunity to sign the documents and to sign agreements. Now we have to see the real support on the ground. Also, the budget is fine, but we really have to make sure that it's not fair that expect that RICO is the only player in the region that should provide reconciliation among young people and citizens in general. We really need support of wider public.
Minutes ago, you said that the final number of applications received during RICO Open Call is 421. Could you inform us about the best ideas that you have received?
It is too early now to go into details because this is now the phase of administrative and eligible checking. But we had two main priority lines. One was intercultural dialogue, so we would like to support programs and projects of young people in constructing, dealing with the past, also to gain their competencies and to support them in developing competencies in intercultural learning, and to at least have these youth exchanges to meet each other and really to overcome these those prejudice and stereotypes, negative stereotypes they have about themselves. It's really meaningful and very concrete way of how we can deal with the reconciliation between young people in the region. And the second priority line is youth participation and social inclusion. And I really think that the role of young people in the decision-making processes in the region should be taken more seriously, and even by the, let's call them older decision makers. I think now we had debates in European Parliament with young parliamentarians. For example, in Serbia, we have only 4 young parliamentarians. It's not about the number, it's about the substance and about the efficiency of their work. Their voice has to be heard, but also they would have to seek their representing capacity from the young people, from the civil society, youth organizations. And RICO can contribute there. One of our programs will be, I hope, in 2018, to connect young parliamentarians from the region to sit all together and to be some kind of ambassadors of RICO, not only RICO, but ambassadors of the needs of young people in the region in parliaments. Because issues of young people, this is really cross-cutting subject, from health to economy, from education to culture. I mean, there are millions of topics that should be addressed, that should be discussed when it comes to young people.
How can you make, basically, governments accountable on this issue?
That's for sure. I think it should go even further on. And maybe speaking to you as a EU parliamentarian, the EU Parliament has to do something in this direction. I'm closing up what you said about the reconciliation. I think there should be more done in the region. I'm in charge for a longer time and on the board of the Center for Democracy and Reconciliation in Southeast Europe. It is a foundation, it's a Dutch foundation which is based in Thessaloniki. So far it's a real European way. And we did comparison of the receiving of history in the different school books of the region. Mm-hmm. And I may tell you, it is a nightmare. Because what is written here on specific historical lies, I may say, or one-sided ways is really horrible. I think we are doing a lot. We had to fight for a longer time to get the money from the European Union, but now I think it is on a good way. And this is one part. It's only one part. And I might continue on this. I think I try to be a little bit political. I might ask the region, the governments of the region, to settle the problems which they have along borders. I think that we have still boring problems concerning border lines, arrangements about way to the sea and.
Even visa issues between Bosnia and Kosovo. Even visa is a clear obstacle of the mobility.
It is really horrible. And I think it is right that the region is asking for assistance from the Europeans. It should be done. But this is one obligation which has to be solved in the region itself, to come to a solution. And it would be a good example for the young generation. Maybe Raiko can press in this direction. I think that we are getting here results. Poorly, I think it is a nonsense. I grew up with the problem between Italy and Austria and South Tyrol and so on and so on. It is settled. It's not anymore a real problem. And I think it is really possible. And we have here really boring stories. It is one of the problems of the European Union in general, I may say. Commissioner Hunt, being responsible for regional cooperation, told me cross-border projects on regional development are only few. I think he was spending 10% of the money of the European Union only for this. But we have a lot of cross-border problems which should be done. I think what you mentioned concerning education is a cross-border problem.
It is a problem.
Mutual understanding here, and I think this should be outlined. It can have some success. I may say one of the good parts of the European Union is the Erasmus program and Erasmus Mundus. This is a real success story, and I think you have to develop more in this direction.
Mr. Bogovic, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I want to add something. I fully agree with you. I organized a few conferences once I was in Albania, also Tirana, in Loznica, for example, together with 54 mayors, more than half of them from Serbia, 40% from Bosnia and 10% from Montenegro. And we spoke about Drina region and intercooperation. And I fully agree. I have some experiences also from my previous job. I was mayor in city Krško in Slovenia, and our partnership city was Bajina Bašta in the border with Bosnia. And we made a lot of exchange of young people who arrived in Slovenia, and we showed them cases, what is going on. And as I see, and always when I arrive in this region, I start explanation about European Union with this, that the basic idea of European Union started 5 years after the end of Second World War. And now we are 22 years after the end of Balkan Wars. And we still cannot speak between each other. And I think that the role of Raiko is very important, because I organized together with my colleague Tanja Fajon here a conference, Future of Young People from Western Balkan. I invited a group of young people here. I spoke with them here, also invited them in Slovenia. And when you touch these topics, cooperation in region, it's horrible when you see that this political poison is also between young people. And I think that here is very important role that young people start to orient to the future and to help solve these problems, because this is, from my side, one of the basic problems. The second point, which is, I think, very important, when we spoke about this administrative capacity. Perhaps, as I know this situation, there are some capacity on national level, on level of government ministry, but we have no administrative capacity in local and regional level, or not enough. And I think that here is also the one opportunity for RICON to help to young people who knows languages, who are digital skilled, and involve them in this administrative capacity, because I think here is the big lack of this. And as I always, when I go there, I try to explain these differences between Slovenia, which was part of Yugoslavia, and these Western Balkan countries. I said to them, we had the contact with Italy, with Austria each day in 70s, 80s. And in Slovenia, the politician had no chance to explain to us what European Union is, because we feel this.
You know it.
We know this. And in this case, there are many people, young people, who were in this wartime, and they had no access to this, to see what is going on. We must prepare the challenge to, as much as possible, young people to feel this, to make these changes, and to find a real messengers for these ideas. Yes. And through this, push on government to start to speak about future, not about problems which are actual.
I think I want to underline this is extremely important that again education is appearing. I think it is said that we are in Europe in a phase of neo-nationalism. I think it's not neo-nationalism, it's old egoism.
It is.
It is following the primitive imagination. I think nobody is understanding me. I'm the only one who is understanding me. I think this is never working. And it had to be said quite bluntly. And we have to fight this and to develop examples where mutual understanding is possible. Okay. Maybe the next step for RICO will be if youngsters out of the different countries are concentrating on this open question and showing how they can be settled. Okay. I think you cannot believe only on the governments.
Yes, but Mr. Blanche, at this moment, do you see more similarities or differences between the educational systems in the region? For example, in Bosnia, unfortunately, you have a lot of differences in the country.
Within the country, because of it, the concept of the country.
For me, even to say it doesn't matter. Actually, it's about efficiency. It's about what kind of profile we have after the education. It doesn't have to be similar or different. It's really about how the curriculums are written and how this is applicable in the labor market. I mean, it doesn't have to be the one same and unique approach on having the educational systems in the region. Also have to admit that the education part is not my field of expertise. We are dealing with something slightly different, but this is the topic. This is I graduated, let's say, 10 years ago, and even in my time, the main topic was reform of education. So we are in constant reform, and outcomes are somewhere else. So I think this is the problem for the region, because we haven't had a situation, at least to have on the table ministers in charge for education, and really it's for me still something at the national level. It has to follow what are the concrete needs of each of the country in the region. But I think also there is this regional component, because from outside we are have been seen as a, let's say, joint market, big market that can be a really important partner on the European level. So that's why I think we should think more in the future and to develop the curriculums and to develop programs for especially when it comes to the digitalization, IT sector. For now, we are seen as a region of manpower, a region of even low-skilled or cheap labor force, and I think that this is the paradigm that we need to change.
I beg your pardon. I think you're seen as a region, as you rightly described. But it is seen also as a region where a lot of things are needed for the future. I think it is an area for investment, for the development of the European economy. And I think I'm asking here the region to campaign more in this direction, because it can attract on this way also investment and for sure create jobs for the younger generation, that they are not leaving the region.
Exactly, but that's why I'm again go on something what Mr. Bogovic mentioned. I think really that there are already existing examples, already existing practices. They just need to be taken and implemented in the region. I'm thinking about RICO. I think that Slovenia and Croatia should have the seat in RICO. If we are speaking about reconciliation in the region, and I remember the idea of RICO in 2014 was to have Western Balkan 8. I understand that politically to identify with the Western Balkan was mainly a problem, but I really think when we speak about cooperation in the region, especially between young people, Croatia and Slovenia should have their seat in RICO. And this is one of the steps that RICO will undertake in next years, really to advocate in favor of the idea to have Croatia and Slovenia on board. And I think also certain practices of these two member states can be also very well taken on board and to actually multiply in different fields, especially when it comes to education. And also, please understand, RICO for this moment is mainly dealing with the reconciliation and youth exchange. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It is about also taking already existing practices. What youth exchange done in the example of Franco-German Youth Office was a clear example on how encounters of young people can really contribute to the process of reconciliation.
But I want to add the following. You mentioned rightly France and Germany doing this. This coming out of the historical tension between the two countries. It created two world wars for sure and a lot of other wars here. I think concerning Southeast Europe, the Balkans, or whatever you want to say to the region, I think you have a multifaceted collection of difficulties, and it should be done not only between two.
It's a complicated
multilateral. It has to be done here together.
Yeah.
Because only two, this is creating also a certain distance to the others. There are more than two here in the Balkans.
That's why I said it's inspiration, not the model. It can't be copy-paste and duplicate. It's inspiration.
Last word.
Yes, I have one example. For example, in education system, I work together with people from my region in one Erasmus Plus program. Erasmus Plus about dual learning system. And we invited in cooperation the one school from Zagreb and also Bačka from Vojvodina, for example. And we work together with people from Germany, from Frankfurt region, Hessen. And these are people travel, they see, and I think Raikon, for sure, I agree, 1.5 million, it's not enough for everything, but I'm sure, and I will try to help you that you will have more money in future and to have more possibility for young people, and this is necessary. I agree with you, and I understood you.
And our ministers, our prime ministers, our presidents, they travel, they see things, but we are still stuck in this conversation, and many young people are, as we speak, buying their tickets to go somewhere else. So future is now. Thank you, Mr. Bogovic. Thank you, Mr. Blanuša, Mr. Busek, for being our guests tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Poštovani gledatelji, pratili ste još jedan Forum Europa. Srdačan pozdrav.
Hvala na pažnji, ostanite uz N1.